Hey everyone. So today I figured we'd go ahead and tackle the Dangers of Woo episode that received the other third of the votes during our last polling period. Speaking of polls, the last poll was whether you would give a new atheist the God delusion or God's not great. To my surprise, it seemed like 2/3 of you wanted the God delusion. Personally, I would have picked Christopher Hitchens' God's not great, how religion poisons everything, but that's just me. So even if I don't agree with the majority of you, I guess that's what makes us all individuals. I'd also like to thank all of you that came out to the stream with RJ Downard last Thursday. We were able to raise $300 towards improving the equipment that he uses for his channel. YouTube takes a flat 30% of Super Chat fund, so we ended up earning about $200. But that was enough to get him some studio lighting, an HD camera, a new Blue Yeti microphone, and a stand, as well as pop filters. So I wanted to personally thank everyone who helped out with that. You guys are the absolute greatest. I think that's enough housekeeping for the time being. Let's go ahead and roll the intro. So today, as I promised, we are going to be tackling another episode of Dangers of Woo, this one talking about healing crystals. Typically in the Dangers of Woo series, I don't provide a video that I'm responding to, but instead research that I've brought up on the topic. This time though, the woo is a little bit hard for me to explain, so I found a really popular video on the topic and we're going to be doing a response to that. Also guys, please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It's the fastest way to let me know that my content's worth sticking around for and get notified that new stuff is coming out. With that said, into the woo!
Today's video will be about crystals, what they are, how they are formed, how they work on the energetic levels, and meanings of some well-known crystals. Let's start with how crystals actually work. First of all, it's important to realize that our entire body system is just energy that shows up in different densities and patterns.
A few seconds in and we've already got a bit of an issue. From what I can tell, we are not actually made up of energy. Energy is a property of matter and we are made up of matter. Energy is simply the potential for a physical system to change. It is not what the physical system is made up of.
Our thoughts and emotions are connected to our physical bodies and have a density of their own.
I can see I'm going to be doing a lot of interrupting in this video. Thoughts do not have density in any way, shape, or form. Thoughts are a non-physical emergent property of the brain, the same way that the software in a computer browser is a non-physical pattern on top of the physical process of a computer. The computer is real. It has physical properties, just like the brain, but the thoughts, just like the programs, do not have physical properties. What she's going to be doing, though, is she's going to be using these terms that she's so ill-defined to make it sound like her woo can actually function in the real world. Once we start giving the brain waves some type of property outside of the chemical processes that cause them to come about, you are then able to make false inferences as to what is able to actually interact with those brainwaves. As a side note, it seems to me like the thought process that leads to brainwaves having some type of density is the same type of thought process that leads flat earthers to ill-defined density in the same fashion.
When these patterns of energy work in a balanced way, then we experience our health. However, these energy patterns can be disrupted, which then results in poor health, from headaches to serious diseases. Crystals are thought to be the most stable form of matter in the universe.
So there's a few things that are being described here, and the way in which they're being described is the issue. For instance, we can take issue with her actual claim, which I will do here in just a second, but the first thing I'm going to take issue with is the delivery method. If you check in the original video, which will be linked in the description, you'll notice that there are no citation links, there's no source links, nothing. There's absolutely nothing for people who are watching her content to actually check out afterwards to verify her claims. The other half of the issue is that she's saying the words, "it is thought that." This causes us a few issues. First of all, it means that we are no longer taking her claims on her face value. We are now to assume that there is a source for these claims, which is not cited or linked, but it also verbally takes the onus off of her who's actually making the claim. When somebody uses verbiage that implies that it is their thinking that something is the way that it is, we can then ask them why. But when you use the words "it is thought that," you are then taking the onus completely off of yourself and throwing it onto a source that you do not cite in any way, shape, or form. I know this might seem like I'm being pedantic, but I'm really not. This is language that you'll find as incredibly common in all kinds of woo. They'll say things like, top scientists agree, or all people this, or 4 out of 5 dentists agree. It sounds like a qualifying statement, but it's really not. As for the problems with the actual claim itself, diseases are not caused by energy waves. I'm sorry, that is complete New Age crap. The germ theory of disease has a very thorough explanation of what causes diseases. As for crystals being the most stable form of matter in the universe, that, like almost everything else that has been said so far, is an easy way to use bad verbiage to make it seem like something is what it's not. What crystals are not is the most stable form of matter in the universe. Solids are the most stable forms of matter, and crystals just happen to be solids. So by this definition, all solids are the most stable form of matter and therefore have medicinal properties. Again, this is an issue you find with almost all forms of woo. You'll actually see that the verbiage is used in such a way that what they say isn't an outright lie, but it most certainly is not a truth. And I'm not necessarily saying this person is trying to lie with intent. They might thoroughly believe this, but that in and of itself is its own issue.
Due to how they are formed within our planet, crystals grow in the Earth's crust over millions of years at high pressures and heat, making them objects with the most energy, as each step in the formation of a crystal contains energy.
That's certainly not how energy transfer works. Using more energy to make something does not mean that the thing that you make automatically has more energy inside it. If I expend a certain amount of energy to make a ball of glass, and then I expend more energy making a different ball of glass that's inherently the same, the second ball of glass does not automatically have more energy inside it.
The crystal's journey begins deep below the planet's surface, where lava and hot fluids circulate. Crystallization occurs when layers of the planet's mantle fracture, which allows heated gases and liquids forced by high pressure rise towards the surface. Elements such as water, oxygen, sodium, iron, potassium, and magnesium are also present, and in the process they merge and dissolve, with other elements being pushed to the surface. As this mixture rises and passes through cooler, less active layers of rock, crystals begin to grow in the rock's cavities and crevices.
Now, from what I can tell, none of these statements are entirely inaccurate. It's just describing how particular crystals form. Although, this is another one of those things that you happen to see with all kinds of woo. There's a little bit of science involved. This tiny bit of fact will be used as a grounding point for you to determine the veracity of the rest of the claim. How much this one statement conforms to facts does not automatically mean that the entire claim conforms to facts. If you go back to listen to other Dangers of Woo episodes I've already done, you'll notice that a similar thing is said in each. In urine therapy, it's the claim that urine is sterile. For anti-vaxxing, it's usually the claim about different chemicals that are used as preservatives, like mercury. And for faith healing, substitute real science for the belief that prayer has a power behind it to begin with. In each of them, and with crystals, you start with something that people already believe to be true, and then use it as a route to expound further. This is how pseudoscience and manipulation work.
Crystals are alive like everything else in the universe.
If we're going to do what we've done with the rest of the video and assume that she's using a very different definition of the word alive than any other normal living being would use, then the claim might actually have some factoid behind it.
They work with the human energy field and are able to diffuse, absorb, move, or shift energy within the body.
And now we're moving into the real woo. We've gone from the establishing groundwork to the actual claim itself, that crystals can affect the body. A magnet can harm your body if you have a pacemaker. A radioactive rock can harm your body as well. But remember that these instances are incredibly different than a rock having very particular vibrations that affect the human brain waves. The fact that there are rocks that can have effects on the human body does not mean that all rocks have differing effects on the body.
Crystals vibrate at different levels depending on their composition and color, as do the cells in the human body. They all vibrate on their own frequency.
Again, this is another issue with woo. We hear something that actually is somewhat true. Solids, liquids, and gases are made up of particles that are vibrating at very, very particular frequencies. For instance, quartz, which is used in modern clocks, vibrates at a frequency of 32,768 Hertz. That's equal to 2 to the 15th power cycles per second. So what she's saying isn't wrong. It's the claim that she's making with that as a basis that's wrong.
As do the energy centers in our body, our chakras. A video about chakras will be linked in the description.
So this particular type of woo relies on a completely different type of woo in order to gauge its efficacy, and she's more than willing to link in her description a source to the other kind of woo, but not to any of the actual scientific claims. Needless to say, what I get from this particular statement is that this has a target audience, and that target audience already believes these things.
Crystals operate by naturally focusing and magnifying the body's innate energies, dissolving and equalizing emotional, mental, and physical stress. They can alleviate suppressed or unreleased pain and help to make desired shifts in every aspect of one's being.
Now here's another issue we have. Getting rid of stress is something that almost anything can do, and what relieves your stress will be subjective and entirely based on the individual who is being stressed at that moment. But because a claim like this is subjective to begin with, it automatically will increase the rate at which people will claim anecdotal evidence in support of the claim. This is typically where you'll hear things like, "I put crystals around my head and that solved my headache." Genetically Modified Skeptic actually did a wonderful video about the efficacy of personal experiences already. If you can utilize the placebo effect in order to de-stress yourself, then it's just as useful as anything else. The issue I hold is when you're trying to convince other people of that.
So when we come into contact with a crystal, its vibration interacts with the vibration of our cells in our human body. First of all, yeah, it's not a myth that crystals have energy. Crystals actually have a very high and precise rate of vibration and are utilized in modern technology. This includes liquid crystals in calculators and clocks. They're also used in credit cards, phone lines, and lasers for microscopic surgery. Working with crystal energy helps the body to find its natural rhythm and restore its energetical balance.
I don't know how many times I'm going to say this in this video, but I think you probably see the pattern here. The crystal claim can't stand on its own, so it has to latch on to other things. So you grab little nuggets of information that may or may not be true, and then combine them together in a blender to come out with your claim. This particular smoothie will involve quartz clocks, prior belief in chakra, subjectivism and the possible ignoring of the placebo effect, and the actual science behind how crystals are formed and what their composition is and how they vibrate. You could believe every one of these things to be true. It would not then follow that crystals have healing properties though. But that is something we see in all types of woo, new age or not. Multiple belief or fact claims that somehow when compiled all together make an actual claim. Unfortunately, it's a very easy trap to fall in, and that's where I start to hold issue. People who are incredibly gullible can fall for something like this very easily. Also, small nitpick, energetical isn't a word.
Crystal healing is basically laying of the stones of different vibrational frequencies on your body in order to effect healing or change. It may also involve laying out different energy grids or specific patterns of crystals around the body. That way, by using patterns, the combination of stones can enhance their individual properties and direct energy. Crystals are thought to be able to relieve and release stress, stimulate brain activity, amplify your healing power and potential, restore energy and stimulate energy flow through your meridians and energy centers, reconnect you to yourself, ground you, and connect you to our earth.
Truth be told, crystals can do some of those things. They can ground you better. Laying them around in patterns can relieve stress. The thing is though, when it comes to examples like that, crystals aren't doing that because they're crystals. Crystals are literally filling in a blank slate that can be filled in by anything. Video games can ground you and de-stress you. Reading a book can ground you and de-stress you. These healing crystals aren't doing anything special. And if somebody wants to use them as a method of de-stressing, then that's on them. Just like I would use video games to de-stress myself, I'm not going to say that what you're doing is better than mine, or the other way around. I am going to say, though, that the claim that crystals are somehow special in what they do is completely bogus. On top of that, any medicinal claims about them being able to affect headaches, cure diseases, or realign chakras, whatever you mean by that, these are where the efficacy of your crystals start to fall apart. In practice, they seem to do nothing more or less than any other hobby would for an individual. And when they're looked at as a hobby, then they're perfectly harmless. When we start accepting the baggage of what else they're claimed to do, that's when you start to come across issues.
For hundreds of thousands of years, crystals, gemstones, and minerals have been used to heal or enhance physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual balance. The ancients must have somehow known that when worn, the energies of the crystals would interact with the human body's electromagnetic field and bring about subtle energy changes.
Or, as is the case with a lot of ancient knowledge, they simply believed that that's what happened, and you believe it now too, and both of you are wrong. Not all ancient claims are false, but this one definitely is.
Royals have worn crystals throughout history in their crowns, jewelry, thrones, swords, as rings or as necklaces. Interestingly enough, having a specific crystal in your crown could activate your crown chakra, and having a necklace over your heart chakra could activate your heart chakra. Same goes for rings, which would stimulate energy flow through your meridians, or earrings to stimulate reflex points. So that kind of makes you wonder if all jewelry was created to connect different healing stones to different energetic points on human body.
There's actually nothing interesting about that. For eons, people have associated different jewels, different flowers, even different hand signals to mean certain things. This is just basic communication. Purple meaning royalty had nothing to do with the color purple. It had everything to do with the rarity of the snail that had to be ground up in order to create that color at the time. In that same way, particular crystals being worn on particular parts of royals' body have nothing to do with chakras. Instead, they have everything to do with the image they portray to the people and the value of the individual gemstones. This is the same type of logic that leads people to look at composite shots that are used by NASA and then assume that because composite shots are used to create the image we know of as the Earth is then somehow flat. If something doesn't follow, it just doesn't logically follow. Past this point, she just starts talking about what different other cultures have used for crystals and what other jewelry they have used throughout history. If that's something that you'd like to hear about, then the link to her video will be in the description below. With that said, I do still need to give my take because this isn't just a video response, this is also a Danger of Woo episode. And honestly, I think that collecting crystals as a hobby is perfectly harmless. It doesn't have the same baggage behind it as something like anti-vaxxing does. I don't think there's any danger behind this practice or even really any woo behind it until you start assigning medicinal or psychological claims to it. The crystals are just rocks, and as rocks are, they're harmless until you start utilizing them as a tool. Now, past the fact that somebody could believe in this and then use it as some sort of substitute for actual medical care, which we see a lot of the time, what with urine therapy and anti-vax. The other issue I see from this is that there are some businesses that are profiting from selling these crystals as healing crystals specifically. At that point, you're just preying on magical thinking, and I usually tend to avoid that term, but I do think that here it somewhat applies. And now, since we've reached the end of the video, you guys know what time it is. People have been clamoring for a debate between William Lane Craig and Matt Dillahunty. Who do you think would honestly win that debate? Let me know by clicking the iCard above, and please discuss your choice in the comment section below. The more detailed, the better. There's a whole lot of history behind both of these individuals and the skeptic community, so I'm sure you all have opinions. With that said, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please make sure to like and subscribe so you can see more. Hit the notification bell icon so you can see things as soon as they come out. This coming Thursday will be an LHAC video, so if you're up for a more philosophical episode, please stay tuned for that. If you want to support the channel, please feel free to donate on Patreon, links in the description. With that said, everyone, as we roll into the Patreon slides, as always, insert end of video tagline here.